right, welcome everybody. I am so excited for today's episode of the partnership with Xiaofei Zhang from ActiveCampaign. Xiaofei is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Platform Partnerships at ActiveCampaign, and she's going to tell the incredible story of how ActiveCampaign became the number one app on the Salesforce App Exchange for marketing automations. So great to have you, Xiaofei. One
Hello. Thanks, Franz, for the opportunity. Nice to meet you all. Happy Thursday.
Nice. As always, this is a live show, so that means that you can ask questions directly to us. So feel free to just drop your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to answer them. And also let us know where you're tuning in from today. So before we get into this talk, I think it's really important to explain why it matters and why this has been such an incredible partnership that it's worth to actually dedicate an entire episode to just one partnership. Because the team at ActiveCampaign actually grew their revenue by over 100% every year since they started working together with Salesforce in 2019, I think, right?
Yes.
And then 20% increase in revenue per customer and 75 five-star App Exchange reviews. That's incredible. It's so hard to get a five-star App Exchange review because if anybody has an issue with their integration, they kind of immediately drop you a 1-star or something. So 75 five-star App Exchange reviews is no small feat. So let's start from the top, Xiaofei. Why did ActiveCampaign decide on Salesforce as its top partner versus a Shopify or a Pipedrive? There's so many different options to partner with platforms. Why did you pour all your efforts into one single partner?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe I will just even take a step back for folks who are joining who are less familiar with who ActiveCampaign, who we are, what we do. I'll just give a quick high-level summary. So ActiveCampaign, we are a customer experience automation platform. So what does that mean? So it's a suite of solutions, primarily email marketing, marketing automation, CRM, e-commerce, marketing automation, all of those solutions. But the bread and butter is we help customers automate their data and customer experiences. So that's high level background. And how we started with Salesforce, it really comes back to customer feedback. I think that the true beginning of this story is 2018. So the partnership started in 2019, but starting in 2017, 2018, we just kept getting feedback as our sales teams are, in sales calls or customer, CSMs are taking customer calls. We just keep getting asked, do you integrate with Salesforce? Oh, you don't. Oh, I'm not buying your solution. We just keep hearing this over and over again. And that to that point, we're okay, we need to look into actually having an integration with a Salesforce. And that's where we also dug into deeper data, through all the, feedback we collect and, really trying to estimate the value of the partnership. So it's really coming from customer feedback.
How did you do that? How did you estimate the value of the Salesforce integration versus another integration? Because I'm sure that you got multiple different feedback points.
Yeah, for sure. So we are a pretty product-led organization. So there are multiple ways that we collect data kind of throughout the customer journey. So one big part is we have an app marketplace ourselves. So, people just go search for apps and then install from there. And if they can't find an app, we surface an app request form. What app do you want? So we see a lot of Salesforce mention coming in from that. And during our trial onboarding flow, we ask customers, the common tech stack and the tools that they want to bring in to integrate with AC. So a lot of, it comes from that and also comes from the notes that our sales and CSM team took. So we can actually associate a lot of lost deals due to not having the Salesforce integration. Back in 2018, we could attribute $1 million in lost revenue because of this. And then our CSM team also dug out additional $500K of churn because we didn't have this integration. And I think now that I think about it, looking back, 1.5 million, we thought, that's a no-brainer. We should do this integration. But there was so much more that, that we, and that probably was hidden inside. This attribution was a direct attribution, but, this impact was a lot larger. So,
yeah. It's so hard, right? Because especially with a tool like ActiveCampaign, which is product led, I assume a lot of customers might not even search for the solution, or might not even like sign up for the solution if they don't see a Salesforce integration. So they might already disqualify you before you are actually like, in the race and actually
Oh yeah,
talking to the sales team.
totally. Yeah, totally. So for sure.
Awesome. I just want to give a quick shout out to Cordero and Paolo who joined us live in the chat. Great to see you all. And make sure to drop your questions in the chat as well if you have any questions for Xiaofei. So one thing which I find interesting about this is like, because the partnership was so extensive, what was the benefit of like building this partnership and like building the strategic alliance versus just building an integration? Because I think the standard move would have just been like, hey, let's just sign up for the app exchange, or let's just build a Salesforce integration. That's it. Like at Hopin, for example, we do have a Salesforce integration, but we're not on the app exchange. Like, what was the rationale to actually invest in the partnership and like invest in this kind of like partner as your number one strategic alliance?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think I actually have to give credit to Justin Zimmerman for, I think, his like LinkedIn tagline. So he has it in his profile: integrations do not equal partnerships.
Yeah,
And I can't agree more. I think that's the beauty of like tech partnerships and integration partnership. It's so multifaceted. So on one hand, there is like inherent like product nature to what we do, right? We are helping to fill a product gap, and this is what our customers need. So sometimes you just have to have this integration to provide a great customer experience. The way that we didn't want to stop there was we clearly see so much value of going beyond just having integration. Obviously, we would have been, pretty successful, recouping the churn or the lost deals, but we know we can drive new business on top of that. Like we can drive new business in Salesforce, and we know we can get new business from Salesforce with this integration because our solutions are so complementary and the ICP alignment and everything. So yeah, so we
yeah.
wanted to aim high.
That sounds great. I mean, it's classic. Like, are you playing defense or offense? Like, just building an integration, covering your bases is like a classic defensive move. Like trying to stop churn. But really, it's about winning more customers. Really, it's about winning more market share, which you've
Yeah,
clearly done.
that's where you complete the life cycle. I think if you just had an integration, you're covering maybe like the product adoption, maybe the product gap, and that will lead to organic expansion as well. But then if you tag on a partnership, you fill the kind of the top of the funnel, that part of the customer journey.
Yeah. Got it. So let's change gears then and go into the next phase of the partnership. Like you identified Salesforce as the ideal partner. Like who do you reach out to? Like how do you identify the people who actually care? Because Salesforce has a very established program. Like Salesforce has a very established program for onboarding partners. So do you just go for the program or do you try to like circumvent that somehow?
Yeah, that's a great question because I am sure for folks dialing in, if you were trying to do something similar, this was probably an overwhelming moment for you. Like Salesforce has 80,000 employees. It's like, where do you even start? I had to give a lot of props to my team because it was pretty much an all hands on deck. So essentially, when we were just starting out, right, we knew nobody. There was no connections at all. You kind of start with what you have, right? We all know the 6 degree kind of theory. Like start with the mutual connections that we have collectively in our company network, because we all probably know someone who works at Salesforce or know someone who knows someone who work at Salesforce. So you just
Yeah.
the spider webs, just like start there, like who do I know or who do you know, and reach out to them and try to have a conversation. I think initially it's not going to just magically work. Oh, the first person you talk to at Salesforce end up being the perfect opportunity. But I think it's almost, this is, playing into also just, in sales, the outbound strategy, right? Like you had to get
Yeah.
the volume going, reach out to as many people as you can reach, have a conversation there. And then over time, with every conversation, you learn more about Salesforce, you learn more about the different teams within Salesforce. And with every conversation, you try to learn how AC can be helpful to Salesforce. And also you try to ask for introductions. Oh, can you introduce me to somebody else? Who do you think would be a good person for us to meet next? So it kind of just keeps building from there.
Yeah. And like I saw like many people, Shay's talk last year where he discussed
Mhm.
this like partnership in detail at a presentation in Catalyst, and then you gave another presentation about this like I think a month ago or 2 months ago about exactly this partnership and like went down in detail. It took like a year to actually like make the first contact with the right team at Salesforce. How do you actually make sure that your leadership team was bought in for an entire year while you're just reaching out to Salesforce and trying to like build that momentum inside of the company? Because a lot of CEOs don't understand that these things take time, and like if you don't see results within 2 months or so, they might just like abandon the project. They might just say like, "Oh, this is not worthwhile," right? Like, how do you make sure that everybody's still aligned after an entire year of like reaching out to the right team?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I think this kind of ties into the leadership buy-in piece. I think it's probably like a collective trauma in the partnership profession, professional industry in our circle. I think we were lucky in the sense that if anything, our CEO was the person who really gets the value of the ecosystem. And
Mm-hmm.
like he just gets it. Like, just a couple of examples, with ActiveCampaign, like our product, we were built as a platform and an ecosystem to begin with. Like we didn't just want to be, oh, we're like a vertical tool, we're just, ESP or we're just marketing automation. The original vision of a product is this is a platform and the core of it is automation. So essentially we are not, we're very anti all-in-one. We, from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, we get the value of partners. Like we allow you to bring in the best solution that you use daily basis. And then we make sure that they talk to ActiveCampaign. So that's inherent in our company and product strategy. And then on top of that, it's, our CEO gets the value of just partnerships beyond product in driving, revenue and growth. So that was really fundamental. I think it didn't take a lot of convincing for, leadership team to know, okay, like strategic partnerships are important to drive AC into the next phase of growth. I think at that point, Salesforce was the first big alliance that ActiveCampaign did ever in like company history. So it was a
Wow.
very like all hands on deck approach. So everybody was invested in this. This was a top company priority. So from CEO, all the VPs, and everybody in the company were trying to think about how to make this work. So there was amazing alignment as well. So
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, Jared Fuller always talks like from Partner Hacker. He always talks about partnerships not being a team but a strategy, and it feels like ActiveCampaign really embodies that or has embodied that in this partnership because it was just clear that every team, like the product team and like the CEO and the marketing team and so forth, all like kind of pull on one string in order to make this work, rather than just the partnerships team kind of like doing its own thing on the side.
yeah,
So
I think for big alliances, if you kind of have to go all in to even make that work, it is like already difficult to
yeah,
try to make something work. If you do it like half-heartedly, it's definitely not going to work.
yeah, definitely, and have the belief that like we're spending a year on trying to find the right team, but it will pay off at some point.
Yes. And this is not to say we dropped everything else. So the business was running, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah, for sure.
always
Cool. And I think now is the time for the plot twist because after a year, the campaign team actually connected with the right team at Salesforce, and I think this is like a really interesting, must have been a really interesting experience for you because you have a very special relationship to Salesforce Essentials. If you want to explain a little bit more.
Yes. So I'm not sure how folks, were familiar or looked at the other resources, but I sat on both ends of this partnership. So that's how I met ActiveCampaign initially. Was I was the first partnership hire for the Salesforce Essentials team, and I was ActiveCampaign's partner manager at that time. And then later on, I went to ActiveCampaign about a year and a half ago. So yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of have a unique perspective covering both ends of this partnership.
That's so cool. I think that's such a unique experience and like perspective on partnerships. And also like in hindsight, it makes so much sense that ActiveCampaign and Salesforce Essentials were like a match made in heaven, right? Because as far as I understand, Salesforce Essentials is like a trimmed down version of Salesforce targeting like SMBs, which needs then also like a more of like product led growth motion than Salesforce traditional like software, which is, much more sales led as well. And it
Mhm.
seems like ActiveCampaign had an ideal ICP overlap there.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a question from the audience, which I think is actually super relevant just now. And as what do you think finally convinced Salesforce to buy into the alliance? Um, there were probably other companies like ActiveCampaign trying to build partnerships with them too. And you're at Salesforce right now. You just launched Salesforce Essentials. Your remit is probably to expand partnerships with everybody. Like, why do you think ActiveCampaign was such a good fit? Or when you were at Salesforce, did you know about ActiveCampaign already, or
No,
were they just
never.
coming in left field?
Yeah, for sure. I like before 2019, I've never heard of ActiveCampaign. So this is, I think, also the beauty of this story, like how this became so successful. So I can explain some more context behind like why this was a match made in heaven. So at
Yeah.
Salesforce, obviously, massive organization, there are like many teams that have some sort of a partnership function, right? So you have like the core app exchange team maintaining the Salesforce partner program. And then like with new business unit like Salesforce Essentials, the team I was part of, I mean, we have a partnership team because we had a specific remit to grow, essentially drive awareness and top of funnel for this new product. Because like it's like rare for big companies to have moments where they need help. Like back then, the Essentials was a new product. Like Salesforce was successful, but we still needed to drive distribution for Essentials. It's a new kid on the block, so we needed
Mhm.
partners to help with that. So that was already an amazing setup like for any partner to come in, because back then we were looking for partners to help us. And then the way that ActiveCampaign came in, they pitched such a compelling opportunity because first of all, our solution was just so complementary. So back then, like Salesforce Essentials, because it was built for small business, they actually, the product itself didn't have like native marketing capabilities. And then there was no marketing automation partner for Essentials back then. So the fact that ActiveCampaign came in, like, we can fill this gap for you because as small business, you're running your relationships in the CRM. You also need a marketing automation solution, and we can be that partner. So that was a match made in heaven. And in terms of, product compatibility, we were complementary. And then the second thing was actually Campaign made such a compelling case on how they can drive top of funnel for Salesforce. Like they can, I think this comes back to partnership, right? I think you give value before you capture it. I think Active Campaign team did such an amazing job. They didn't come in and be like, what can we get out of Salesforce? Then it would just not work. It would be like, what can we do for Salesforce? And then they presented all these ideas. Because back then my metrics was just new trials driven through partnerships. And then once they learned that, they presented all sorts of ways on how they can drive top of funnel. So that just made it a no-brainer for our team to prioritize this relationship.
Got it. That's so interesting. I don't think I heard that before. That new trials was the North Star metric, because it's so important
Mhm.
that you identify that North Star metric and then actually like align all your core marketing activities towards that North Star metric. And in your case, it was fascinating because it's not necessarily revenue; it's trials, because it is a
Mhm.
new product. That makes a lot of sense, but it's not something you would have like necessarily come up with yourself with your active campaign, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So then the story basically goes on that Shay, who was at the time like at ActiveCampaign, and reached out to you, actually flew to San Francisco around once a quarter to connect with your team and like have meetings and also like create experiences. So to go out and then actually like like bring coffee over, make sure you bring swag over as well, which is very important, and so forth. I have a question for you. What were your thoughts about Shay at the time coming over? Because A, he was actually not in partnerships, right? He was actually a designer at ActiveCampaign. And then B, you built this like probably elaborate partnerships program like Salesforce has, where partners sign up for and then like, have to go for a whole flow and everybody gets a standardized package and so forth. And then there's this designer from ActiveCampaign just shows up all the time, like once a quarter in San Francisco at your office and wants to connect, wants to talk about the partnership, wants to do something outside of your program. Like how do you feel about that? That somebody's trying to circumvent a program like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's so funny you mentioned this because I had the same exact thought. Because when Shay initially was like reaching out to our team, his title is VP of Design. So I'm like, what is this? So I think this speaks to how back then, what when I was mentioning like Salesforce was the first big alliance that ActiveCampaign did. So there was no partnership team back then. So people were like filling in, and whoever felt passionate, motivated to make this work essentially paved the motion for having profit strategy or partnership at ActiveCampaign. So I obviously like it only took a couple meetings for me to realize, okay, Shay's being very serious because he always shows up. They are prepared for every meeting, ready to show value, create value, together. I think on the topic of like circumventing the proper partner program, that's a really good one because I don't know, like for folks in the audience, how many of you are official Salesforce partners? So like you probably know there is a proper program, like the Salesforce App Exchange program is kind of, if you were to do it properly, you kind of started at the lowest like totem pole, and then your like rev share, you grow kind of go all the way up, and to unlock kind of the highest tier and being, I forgot what the tier is called, being the highest tier partner, that's where all the amazing benefits are. But the road to get
Mhm.
there is pretty difficult and it's expensive. I would say definitely do that. I think when it comes to working with strategic alliances, I wouldn't like limit yourself to anything. So doing the proper program matters because that's what ActiveCampaign did as well. We
Yeah.
followed the rules, the process. We built an integration, passed the security review. We were officially listed in the app exchange, but then we also optimized it, right? We grabbed the number one spot in the marketing automation category. That was all, playing fair game in the proper program. But then don't stop there because there are 80,000 people. There are probably other teams that you could find synergy with. And that's what the team did was, going around and talking to many other teams. And that's when the perfect opportunity landed with my team back then with Salesforce Essentials, because that was a perfect ICP. Essentials was built for small business. And also back then we had the flexibility to play outside of the rules a little bit. So we offered
Mm.
things that normal Salesforce partners wouldn't get, from
Yeah.
our team. So yeah.
Right. So it wasn't just that Shay was a maverick who just came in and said like, I don't want to play by the rules. I want my own thing. I'm special. Because I feel like that happens to me once in a while. Like once in a while, a partner will come by and say like, you have 6 caption solution already, but we're a different caption solution, and we want to have our version of like a partnership, which is going to be a strategic alliance with you, and it's going to be different from the other 6 you already have. And I'm like, this is not how it works. Like we have a program. It's well defined. It's clear what you get out of it, and that's it. Um, so it's good to know that like ActiveCampaign still played by the rules while also pushing for additional benefits on the side or additional partnerships on the side.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, this year we have been doing a lot more through our Active Exchange program because as we are kind of going up market and developing kind of a sales led motion, especially outbound, like working with bigger accounts, that created a perfect opportunity to actually do like go to market or co-selling with Salesforce and building relationship more with the Salesforce, AE teams. So yeah, so again, that's coming back to like you always want to have a few different eggs in the basket, and at any given time, maybe you do more with one, but then later on you do more with the other team.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. We have another question from the audience, but before that, I just want to make sure that we get one slide in because that is like my favorite slide from your presentation and from this entire story, and that is how you and Shay negotiated co-marketing activities, right? And here I think is like a really interesting part because Shay was like the VP of design, so he didn't just show up with like like ideas, but he actually showed up with mocks as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. That was one of my most memorable meetings as well with just any partner. So essentially back then, this was when the ActiveCampaign integration was already underway. There was a date, set for the launch. And then we were working backwards. How do we want to do go to market of this integration? So that's when that meeting, Shay walked in with a deck of like 40 pages full of different unique go to market ideas that ActiveCampaign can execute for the launch of this integration, and they can execute on behalf of our team to drive new business for Salesforce. So that was just such a powerful meeting because, so, I mean, you might imagine, oh, some of those slides would be the standard stuff. Oh, we'll do a block swap or I don't know, a press
Yeah.
release. There was none of that. Every slide had a unique marketing, like co-marketing idea that was just super intriguing. Like, I mean, part of me knew like those would never get approved by my team, but still just the fact of going through this, it showed like how much effort and thought they put into this and how committed and serious that they were to the partnership. That later on, even though we said maybe 100 no's in that meeting, later on what AC got was a like commitment, like a yes from our team to try to figure something out together.
And what were like the initiatives from that deck which actually happened? Did any of that actually happen, or did you then just like abandon all of the ideas in the deck and then come up with something completely new? And what did you end
Yeah.
like agree on in the end?
So some of those definitely happened, and some of those actually drove tremendous results, like for the Salesforce team. Like AC offered all kinds of like so putting like Salesforce on the login screen with a login promo, or there was like in-app banner nurtures, like very like personalized and targeted outreach. So there were definitely a few ideas that we executed, and also just how like we can create like co-branded landing pages and like joint event activation. So yeah, they're definitely. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
that all of those didn't happen. So we definitely executed off some of that.
Yeah, the putting the partner on the login screen is such a genius move because it's a like an absolute strategic alliance flex. Like that, you can only put one partner in that space, right? Like you log in here to ActiveCampaign, and then next to it is like Salesforce Essentials. So there's only space for one partner. And then secondly, like Shay said something which I think is really interesting is that you have to look at the whole life cycle, and you have to also look at how you can use each other's platforms to grow, right? So it's not just like, oh, putting a blog post which is somewhere like disparate which nobody ever looks at. It's about like putting it front and center of where customers actually are, which is probably in the product.
Yes, for sure. So that's actually going back to at some point we even gave Salesforce some feedback because I mean we're in the marketing automation and customer experience nurturing business, and we what
Yeah.
we noticed was we sent Salesforce so much traffic, but there wasn't like an adequate nurturing flow on that end to take care of those traffic. So conversion rate was somewhat low. So we were like, like I think you can try these things to better convert our traffic. So
Is that how you sold in the active campaign in the end?
yeah, I was like, yeah, I think actually nobody knows what they're doing. Yes.
That's great. Cool. And that is ultimately also how you got 1,000 mutual customers to install the integration within 6 months, which is such an incredible milestone. I do want to make sure that we address Paulo's question in the audience, and that's strategic alliances can take a long time before they start impacting. How was progress measured and reported to the exec level along the road? Like, how did Shay report back, and how did you report back at Salesforce, and what was the difference between you two?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think definitely depends on the phase that you're in. You're focused on different activities. I think it's very overwhelming to kind of try to always report on the ultimate goal. That's where you want to get to. But I actually like how like France like broke this down kind of in a partnership. There are different stages. There's the foundation formation stage, and then the relationship building stage, and then like ideation, implementation, launch stage, and then ongoing like go to market growth. So I think it's less intimidating to break it down into stages and just focus on what you need to do at this stage of the relationship. So in the beginning, it would be like getting as many calls booked as possible and trying to learn, gather information. And then later on, like as we are getting to the launch stages, it's actually literally focused on, building a good, solid integration, right? Like scoping the use cases and all of that. And then when you get to the go-to-market state, that's more about, the co-marketing activities that we were able to secure from Salesforce or we were able to execute for Salesforce, and the metrics that are tied to the marketing tactics. So yeah, that's how you measure. But yeah, definitely like I think progress metrics are super important. I think that speaks to how constantly providing updates to ELT, giving them the visibility that there's always stuff happening in the partnership. Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's interesting because I think in these alliances, like oftentimes the metrics won't be the same as you're used to. So it won't be like how much revenue did you drive because it's just too far out the production of revenue, right? So
Yeah.
for an alliance which takes so long, it's probably more about like who do you know? How many conversations did you have? What did you learn today? Like what is the new thing that you found out? And you just kind of like inch towards that ultimate goal of producing revenue and join customers over a long period of time by measuring all these in between steps. Awesome. So we are unfortunate at time. I literally have a document with like 20 more questions, which means we might need to do another conversation at some point. But this was so great, Xiaofei. I really appreciate it. If there's one takeaway you have from the Salesforce and ActiveCampaign Alliance that you think is really important and everybody should understand that when they think about this partnerships deal and also when they think about their own alliances they're forming, what do you think is the key takeaway?
Key takeaway, hard to say one. Maybe there are a couple.
We'll take
I
a couple.
think be persistent and create momentum. Know as many stakeholders, a network of stakeholders, as many of them as possible. And also the last piece is think about what you can offer to the other end that only uniquely that you can do.
Awesome. That's great advice. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode of the partnership. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks a lot, Jeffy.
Thank you all.